our particular social world of UT, right? And we can think about students of color, queer students, and any kind of marginalized group of students. We can think of them as rich sources of knowledge. And in that sense, what I want to focus on is thinking about the classroom, right? So for those of us who are faculty or TAs or instructors, lecturers, or have that kind of role in the university, it's important to think about, well, how do you bring in issues of race, gender, and various other social identifiers and categories in the classroom, or at least be very conscious of those things. So I have some experiences, and some other of my colleagues and faculty in cultural studies and education have a lot of experience teaching courses, like for instance the one that I've taught, Social and Cultural Influences on Learning, which is required for undergraduate students, who many of which will be teachers in PK through 12. In that class we talk about race, gender, and class, and how these different things contextualize schooling and impact schooling and learning in very complex ways. And so the conversations that have happened there have been very enlightening for me. So it's really, really important to be very critical of assumptions, and one really great way to do that is to really pay attention to those experiences from marginalized students that tell us a great deal about UT, or tell us a great deal about perhaps any kind of subject matter that you may, as an instructor, may be engaging with. And so one thing that's really, that stands out a lot in thinking about how individuals navigate institutions is the idea of individualism and meritocracy. And one thing that tends to stand out is the idea that students will maybe take things as personal attacks, and many times discussions can shut down when that happens. Or they might take on the idea of, well, it doesn't affect me, right? Or it doesn't influence me. Or what's the big deal, right? These are isolated incidents. Some people are just racist, so it's just how it is, but really things aren't too bad. So those kinds of ideas can really shut down what could become very productive discussions. And so one thing that is very useful is to come back to this idea of kind of turning the lens around and thinking about, well, what is the environment, right? What is the social structure that we are all immersed in and positioned differently, so that some of us may think it's not a big deal, but some of us may be really having a hard time being at UT, right? Or even being in the classroom, in that particular classroom. So, so that idea of turning the lens around and really thinking about the environment, social structure, it can be a very helpful way to kind of get beyond that whole individualism type of mode that some people can get stuck in. And the other thing, to get beyond the idea of meritocracy, right? Pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and, well, no matter what happens, we just charge forward and things will get better, right? Well, in order to charge forward, you kind of have to, again, change that social structure so that people aren't finding themselves experiencing things in very different ways, and some people really going through some very damaging, harmful experiences that while you can get ahead, at the same time, what are the costs, right, for those that really undergo a psychological or mental or spiritual toll?